Good evening, everyone. How are we all doing? I am Chris, and I am here tonight to give my review on Pearl, subtitled An Extraordinary Origin Story, directed by Ty West, starring Mia Goth as the titular character of Pearl. This is a slasher film, slasher horror film, whatever you want to call it, in the what is to become, I guess now, the X series. I think that a third one's planned, titled Maxine or Max Triple X. Exene or whatever you want to call it. Anyway, I'm getting off tangent already. I am a total newcomer to this franchise, pretty much to this series now, having only watched X today in preparation for this film. I first got I can't remember which film I went to see at the cinema. And I got the trailer for this. I'd never heard anything about it, and I saw the trailer and immediately was struck with the how stylized it was and of the time period, and it almost feeling like something straight out of the Wizard of Oz or something like that. I believe Ty West is quoted as saying he wanted to make it almost like, quote, a demented Disney film, I think he said. And that's exactly what it is. And I got that from the trailer, and I was immediately hooked on seeing this film. Tonight at my local Odeon, they were doing a Limitless screening. So I think anyone who has a Limitless membership is allowed to go to it. And I think basically it just means the film's screened a week in advance or so many days in advance from when it gets, a wide release everywhere. So I was already drawn in by the trailer, and I was in two minds whether to watch X today in preparation for this, because I thought, will Pearl as a film be able to stand on its own, or is there going to be some information that's in this film that I need to have watched X to reinforce that knowledge? So I went ahead and watched X, but someone I know actually went to the film tonight as well on my recommendation, and she's never seen X before. So it's going to be really interesting to see what her opinion is on that film now that she's seen this one first. So yeah, we're going to get into it. We've already got Craig in the comments. How you doing, man? Craig says, just watch this again in preparation for your review. Can't wait to hear what you think. I love this film. The editing is great on this film. And we're absolutely going to talk about this too. That ending shot, oh my God, I love Mia Goth. Yeah, so as I said, complete newcomer to this franchise. I guess I can just sort of go over my opinions very, very quickly on X. I may as well before we dive into Pearl. I do want to say as well, sorry guys, it does appear like I'm going down with some kind of cold. So yeah, you're going to have this attractive kind of blocked up nasally voice for the rest of the review, I'm afraid. But anyway, X. I've literally spent about 8 hours with this film because I watched it earlier this afternoon. But I really loved it. The one thing that, well, I mean, Mia Goth is fantastic in the role anyway, as all of the roles that she plays between all of these films and the different personalities she brings to the characters. But Ty West's direction is absolutely flawless, and based on these two films, has absolutely proven himself to be a master of modern horror by replicating tropes and styles from older films. So although it's modern horror, of course they are, they're 2022 movies or whatever, he is adopting the style. You can clearly tell he's a fan of horror. Like, he knows his stuff. He knows his genre filmmaking and the ingredients that need to go into these films. So the first film, X, and he's actually been quoted on this saying that he wants all of these films in the series. I mean, I don't know how many he has planned. We know that he's got Maxine coming out at some point, which is a sequel to X. Whether he's got any more ideas planned as well for the future, but he wants all of these films to have their own distinctive style. X was very much based on sort of like the grindhouse 70s slasher film, the really grainy film. A lot of Texas Chainsaw Massacre in there. You've got the farmhouse, which almost looks identical. The shots within the house of the doorway, almost replicated shot for shot pretty much from some of the angles and the filmmaking techniques in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You've got Italian horror in there as well. The scene with the red filter on the screen and the editing as well in that first film. Also edited by Ty West, as indeed Pearl is absolutely flawless. And is really used to great effect as well. Like, the editing's noticeable. And that's not a slight against the movie, when you say, oh, well, if you can see the cuts in a film, then it's, that's not good editing. A good editor is where, as a viewer, you don't even pay attention to the cuts. But stylistically, how he chooses to edit certain scenes really, really work to the style of the film. There's some Alfred Hitchcock in there as well from Psycho. Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Norman Bates were both kind of based on the same person, weren't they? Ed Gein, in a way. And Psycho's even mentioned in X as well. I had an absolute blast with it, with X. It was almost like a dark comedy kind of film in a way, or maybe that's just me. And I'd say Pearl is even more so a dark comedy. And I think what lends itself well to that genre pretty much is the fact that it is like this really demented Disney film. The film begins, and whilst the style for that first film, X, was a grindhouse 70s horror film, this one is very much in the golden age of Hollywood. It's set in 1918, but it's very much replicating the likes of The Wizard of Oz, from the 1930s going into the 40s. There's a bit of Mary Poppins in there. So there's all of these tropes and visual signifiers. It's basically the Technicolor age of cinema. And I thought that was such a wonderful backdrop for this. It feels so idyllic and, this wonderful American nuclear family, all American, everything's wholesome. As soon as we see Mia Goth's character of Pearl in this, and we've got this wonderful font on the screen that opens the film, and this rousing string section, the music done by Tyler Bates and Tim Williams, and it's these swirling strings. The doors open onto this beautiful farm, and the colors are bright and popping. And then we see Pearl in the barn. She's talking to the animals like a Disney princess. And with how the music is in the background, you're expecting it to go into some kind of musical number, like a big show-stopping tune or something from a Disney film like Belle or something. I want much more than this provincial life. And it's, if you've seen the trailer, well, you know what you're going in for anyway. If you go and see Pearl, knowing that it's a slasher horror film, you know it's going to go south, and it goes south very, very quickly. This was interesting to me as a prequel, having seen X earlier today, and knowing ultimately where the character ends up, what decisions and what things were going to befall her character in this. But I do want to say, apart from a couple of lines that Pearl says within the film, there's nothing overtly glaring that ties it into X. You can watch this in isolation. And I love prequels like that, where the ones where there's too much wink, wink, nudge, nudge to the previous film, and you've kind of got to do your homework before seeing it. I like prequels that can stand on their own. And Pearl is an absolute brilliant example of that. I couldn't even tell you right now which one I prefer. Do I prefer Pearl or do I prefer X? They're both so different, and that's what I love about them. Although they're very much in this universe, they're in this series together, they feel like almost completely separate entities, which is, brilliant. And I think the change in directorial styles and filmmaking styles really lend itself well. And I'm really interested now to see what he's going to do when he comes to direct Maxine, and which era of Hollywood he's going to go with that, because ultimately he's basing things in the horror genre, right? Like the slasher film genre. So some styles are going to work well with that and others probably won't, but I actually don't know what other styles he could do. So I guess that's up to Ty West, and we'll find out when that film comes out. Let me just see. Craig says Mia Goth also plays Pearl in X. The color palette was superb. Maxine will be interesting. I reckon they will go with a 30s black and white Hollywood style. Oh, that's a really good shout, actually. Yeah, like a kind of noir. Yeah, because based on, she's trying to be, she wants to be number. I was thinking maybe like an 80s kind of style, like a sleazy kind of 80s type film. But yeah, maybe a black and white one could work really well. I'd be down for that. I'm really interested. The sky's really the limit, and I love that he has just this vast knowledge of genre in filmmaking, and it's beautiful to see it sort of come back in all these wonderful ways. Craig says, a woman walking after another woman has never been more terrifying. If you've seen the film, you know exactly which scene he's talking about. We want to talk about exactly the same scenes here, but I kind of don't want to give too much away, which is really weird when you're talking about a prequel. Because there are, ultimately where the story ends up. So it does kind of fall into the prequel trap, but yet you still go on this, although you kind of know probably where it's ultimately going to end up, you are still on this weird series of unfortunate events that happen within this film. Some of my favorite scenes in this, well, just let's talk about Mia Goth first, as the titular character. Absolutely wonderful. And I think definitely and she's also given her creative input in the writing of this film as well. The screenplay of this one was done by both Ty West and Mia Goth. So I think it's definitely evident with this film that she was able to give a lot more of her own input into the character and how the character would come across. A wonderfully unhinged performance all the way through. And it does feel like a dark comedy to me. I was actually really surprised that this was a 15 at the beginning of the film when it comes up with the age certificate of the film. I thought this was an 18. I'm not sure actually what certificate X was. I have to imagine, based on stuff that happens in that film, that was an 18. I could be mistaken, but there is some gruesome shit that happens in this movie. Very close up gruesome shit. So I'm very surprised it was a 15. But she kind of comes across as this sweet Judy Garland kind of character. And yeah, but there's a brilliant scene. I think the best scene of Mia Goth in this film is it's got to be like pushing 10 minutes, almost unbroken take of her confessing to every diabolical thing she's done to her sister-in-law. And it's a wonderful example of Mia's performance and just how great of an actress she is. I've only seen her in these two films, to my knowledge. There's actually another horror film coming out that I got the trailer for. I'll check the title for it before I finish this review, which looks really interesting. It kind of looks like some weird Eyes Wide Shut kind of murder cult kind of thing going on. And she's in that too. So she's kind of making a name for herself in the horror genre, and I'm here for it. She's brilliant. But yeah, this 10-minute unbroken take where the camera just sits on her. Initially in the conversation, it keeps cutting back to the sister-in-law. So it keeps you grounded in that moment of, this is the situation. She's kind of confessing everything to her. But then after that point, the camera just kind of sits on Mia and you become aware of it and you just get lost in her confessing everything that she's done, which leads into that wonderful scene there. A woman walking after another woman has never been more terrifying. The bit where she breaks down after the audition as well. And, it's really good how they kind of made her up in this film as well, because Mia Goth's absolutely gorgeous. But when she's unhinged, like later on in this film, and she's like all the makeup's down her face and she's got like all snot and like all over her face, really ugly crying, they make her up really well, because she is very much a narcissist. She thinks she is God's gift to humanity, that she's got this incredible dancing talent, and she's not awful, but she's not world class like she thinks she is. And when she's told that, or if someone tells her that they're scared by her, she doesn't like that. That sets her off. So you're kind of playing this awkward chess game with her, where you're trying to say the right thing, but there isn't a right thing to say. She's already made up her mind. If you say, I need to get out of here, I need to return some videotapes, she will probably fucking murder you. And murder she does in very creative and fun, over-the-top ways in this film. I've mentioned before I've got an incredibly dark sense of humor. So I was laughing at quite a lot of stuff in this film, and nobody around me was. And that always makes me feel really awkward. But I don't know. I'm going to pass it over to you guys. Do you think it was funny? It felt a bit tongue-in-cheek at some points with some of the stuff in this film. And I think a lot of that comes from the actual tone of it. The fact that it is, on the surface, this very bright, technicolored, fun film. This idyllic-looking color palette to it, but with really sinister goings on. And that's usually such a lovely pairing to it. Craig mentions when she lost it with the guy in the barn, she went from sweet to a fucking psycho in like a second. Great acting. Yeah. The shot, the ending shot. I'm going to be all over the place for this review, guys. I do apologize, but the ending shot might be one of the best ending shots to a film I have seen in a hell of a long time. I guess I'm going to spoil the ending shot now, but it freezes on Mia Goth, smiling like a happy housewife, She's prepared that she set the table and gathered everyone around the table. I'm going to leave it at that. And she's got this like cheesy smile on her face, this crazy demented smile, and you can see her eye kind of twitching a little bit, and like the smile like sinks a little bit, and it freezes on her for like so much of the credits. It's brilliant. And then she just starts like tears just start streaming down her face, and it's really, people were staying in the cinema, people were cracking up, people were laughing. So I love the ending shot to this. If I was going to give one sort of criticism, I don't even know if it's really a criticism, because they could do a sequel to this. They could quite easily do a sequel with Pearl and Howard living their life and eventually how they became the old demented people that we see in X. Because Howard's coming back from the war, and the film ends with Howard returning home and witnessing the table that Pearl has prepared for him, and this look of horror on his face, like, what have I walked into? I've just been fighting in the fucking trenches for 4 years, and I come back to this. And the poor man looks terrified, as anyone would. And we know that she doesn't like people getting scared by her. She doesn't like that shit. And she would probably react in a violent way towards Howard, although in her confession, she does acknowledge that Howard is a good man. And she kind of she's always had these like murderous urges to herself and feeling really disconnected and awkward. But she brave faced it. You know, she put on a performance essentially. Even when she met Howard, but she does acknowledge that he is a good man and that she could be happy with him, because ultimately she just wants to be loved. She feels very, very isolated, living on a farm for all of her adult, teen and adult life, not being allowed to go out anywhere, being very isolated, very strict household, with kind of an uncaring family, almost, you get the impression, or at least that's the impression that she gives. So how does Howard become the Howard we know in X? That's what I want to know. Maybe he's going to get a spin-off next, because the poor man looks traumatized at the end of this film. But then the Howard that we know in X is almost as bad as she is. And he's kind of cool with all the killing and the maiming and the murdering and the sex dungeons and the creepy goings on that happen in X. So yeah, I'm not sure. Craig says, I didn't realize that in 1918 that scarecrows were primitive sex toys. That scene was so uncomfortable to watch. And again, probably another Wizard of Oz reference, right? The scarecrow very much is dressed in a similar way, I want to say, to the scarecrow from that 1939 movie. And yeah, Pearl just sexually assaults that scarecrow and has her wicked way with it and just dry humps the shit out of his straw body. It's so awkward and disturbing. And that's what Ty West does really well with these two films, is just like really disturbing, uncomfortable stuff on the screen. And that's what makes it a great horror franchise at the moment. Really clever use of the X as well, which ties the two films together. X marks the spot. That's her position on stage when she does her audition. So I thought that was kind of a neat visual signifier there to it. Yeah, just that. I don't really have much else to say. That there's some really hilariously over the top stuff in this, including someone getting set on fire, which seems really, really extreme for how long she was on fire. But yeah, I'm kind of just, I don't even know what else to talk about this movie. Really. I just had a blast with it. I really did. And from the trailer, I thought I'd like this because it just felt like a breath of fresh air. It's all of these familiar Hollywood signifiers that you've seen from all of these, from the golden age of Hollywood, with this really disturbing, uncomfortable underlying theme to the story, and that it's a slasher horror film. And you know what? Actually, talking about this now, I think I did prefer Pearl to X. Not that I didn't like X. X felt a little bit more run-of-the-mill in some aspects to the story, I guess. But I did like the 70s edge to it. But I don't know, man. I just really like this one. I really, really liked Pearl. Craig mentions, I wonder if the porn film was an actual porn film as it was realistic. I wondered that too. the movie that she sees as well, like the dancing one, I couldn't tell if that was an actual sort of like old dancing film as well. I couldn't tell, but yeah, it was a very primitive porn film, wasn't it? And yeah, just Ty West is willing to go these places with these horror films at the moment, just making them really uncomfortable, and the seedy kind of, you don't really get that in horror films all that much now. Horror films are just kind of boring now. Every now and then you get a good one. But horror films with this kind of subject matter, and the 70s edge to X as well, was a real breath of fresh air to me. Because those are the kind of horror films that I watch. It's 70s and 80s, you know, your classic cinema, your classic Hollywood horror films. All like your mascots, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I know Psycho was in the 60s, but I love that one as well. Craig, you mentioned Hitchcock yesterday with the birds. Hellraiser, John Carpenter's The Thing, David Cronenberg's The Fly. All of like your main titles from the 80s, really. Those are the ones that I go for in the 70s, but there's such a... It's the visual style of those films that just add to the creepy value, I think, of older horror films. And I think that's why they have more of an edge to me. It's the practical effects. It's the limitations they had at the time. You've got really good special effects makeup. You've got like dummies and props and prosthetics and a kind of tinny audio quality. Audio quality back then wasn't as refined as it is now in films. The actual grain on screen, the griminess of some... Go into Texas Chainsaw Massacre, one of the best horror films ever made, Tobe Hooper. That film just makes me want to take a shower after watching it, because it literally looks like they've walked into... Well, I think it was a deserted house they were filming in. It was really low budget. It was like, let's just grab a camera and just go to this abandoned house in the middle of Texas or wherever it was filmed. And it's just, you know, it's just that really grimy, tangible quality to some of those older films that have like a visceral aesthetic to them, and you just don't get that now in Hollywood. You know, in horror films really now. It's all digital. It's very overproduced, and most horror films now don't have that same level to them. That filmic quality to them. I mean, I'm waffling now. I'm going off on a tangent, but I love me a good horror film. And I mean, this isn't even credited as a horror film. It's just credited as a slasher film. But yeah, it's wonderful. Really good use of direction as well, and creative camera shots in this one too. I love the shots of her on the bicycle pedaling past the cornfields. One shot in particular, like a style that Ty West employs towards the end of the film, is this like mirror image shot. It's almost like down the center of the screen is a mirror, and the same thing is reflected on both sides. And I haven't seen that in a film. I don't think so. I haven't seen that used before. But it added like a really interesting quality to it, almost like this kaleidoscope kind of scene to it. I mean, you could read into it as a, you know, film studies. Oh, it shows the duality of her character, and you know, or you could go all into that kind of stuff. But yeah, just really creative stuff going on in this. Craig says it was very subtle that sex sets her off too, as that wasn't really explored in Pearl in depth, but was in X. Yeah, and I think that was a really nice backdrop to the character, that she's been suppressed for all, you know, a lot of sexual tension, I guess, and urges that she's just never got to participate in, really. She has the affair with the projectionist, and he shows her that porn film, which, you know, can spark her imagination. But she's already established that she's, you know, she's dry humping scarecrows, and we're not even aware of God only knows what else, which her mom has mentioned that she's seen her do as well, which was kind of really icky and awkward. But yeah, that does set her off, and that's a huge pivotal part to her character in X, isn't it? Is that she's like this kind of aged nymphomaniac, crazy psychopathic woman who doesn't like being rejected at all. She will fucking murder you if you reject her. So if even if she's like 90 years old and she puts the moves on you, you better perform. you better get it up, because otherwise you're going to be fucking murdered. And as well, you've got the other scene in X as well, where she gets into bed with herself in a way. I guess you could read into that as well. The actress Mia Goth playing both characters, Pearl and Maxine in that first film, and she gets into bed and she starts spooning up against Maxine's character and feeling her up and everything. So, yeah, just a lot of sexual urges going on in that woman. And I'm trying to remember, actually, does Howard say in X that because of his time in the military and it's implied his PTSD and everything, because he fights in 2 wars. She mentions that he fights in both of the wars, that he just can't get it up now. He doesn't have the sexual urges now. I mean, he's an old man, for fuck's sake. And he's got a heart condition, so he doesn't want to, because his literally his ticker could give out at any point. But I think it's also implied that the psychological damage of fighting in 2 wars has also made him be kind of impotent as well. So I don't know if that would have taken place after World War One, after he returns home, or maybe after the Second World War. But the point is, she ain't getting none, and she's a woman that wants some. So, which leads us into X and the stuff that she does in that film. Craig says the only negative is I wish they hadn't used the trope of someone is running away, they fall. Would have been better if that scene went on for 5 minutes. Yeah, I agree. And it's a fine line, isn't it? Because clearly Ty West is trying to emulate a lot of tropes from older horror films and other styles of horror films. And that is kind of a trope of horror films, but it does feel a little bit done to death now. She's the innocent blonde kind of running away and flailing her arms and tripping over. Yeah, that I did kind of roll my eyes a little bit at that, but other than that, I can forgive it for that. I would have liked some scenes. I could have gone for longer in this film, actually. Let me check the runtime. Was it sitting around 2 hours, bang on the dot, I think? Maybe just slightly under. Yeah, I mean, this was 102 minutes. I could have gone for slightly longer on this film. Yeah, and just let some of the events breathe a little bit more. The film did kind of feel like a bit of a slow burn at the beginning before we get all the crazy shit that happens, but all good horror films are a slow burn. But that goose does get murdered in the first fucking scene, so yeah, the gators make a comeback as well. I do feel like I spoilt a lot from this movie, though, by watching the trailer. I mean, if I hadn't have seen the trailer, then I probably wouldn't have discovered this film and X as well in this franchise and being, looking forward to the sequel as well. But I do think that the trailer did give a lot away. The trailer gave away the axe scene where she brings it down, the scene where she kills the goose, the scene where she pushes her father towards the gator in the water. So I do feel like it gave a lot away. But yet there was still a lot in the movie that was a surprise to me and that was fun to witness. So Craig says he wants a film about the alligator. I mean, this is called the X series now, isn't it? I think so. So I don't know how many films Ty West has planned for this franchise, but at the minute I could go for some more. It depends where the story goes. How is this going to be like the new equivalent of Saw or Paranormal Activity, where he cranks one of these films out every single year, or is he going to want to move on to other stuff? But yeah, I'm pleased as punch with these films at the moment and the style. Really interested to see which style he employs next. Because yeah, I trust him. So he's done 70s kind of grindhouse horror and like elements of Italian horror in there. With this one, he's done the golden age of Hollywood and like the Technicolor era. Where could he go next? Oh, one thing I wanted to bring up as well, because I think this was this filmed during COVID or around that time? Well, it would have been filmed around that time anyway, wouldn't it? But it's set in 1918 during the influenza pandemic. And I'm wondering if that was intentional or if that's just the zeitgeist at the moment with us living in a post-COVID world. But the fact that everyone's scared of the germ and everyone's having to wear masks and people are talking about isolating. And I know that was historical, the influenza pandemic. But I'm wondering if that was a deliberate choice to bring some parallels maybe to stuff that we were going through a couple of years ago. And the mass hysteria that people were causing, wearing the masks and everything. So, yeah, I don't know. I wanted to throw that in there. I'm interested to hear your guys' opinion on that. If that maybe influenced Ty West's decision there. But Mia Goth as an actress is definitely one to watch at the moment because her talent is incredible so far. just that how she varies her character within the same franchise as well. But she steals the show in this. It's absolutely wonderful. Craig says the COVID mask did make me laugh. Yeah, when she says when she's talking to her sister-in-law at the end at the table, and she says, "I'm not feeling well," and her sister-in-law's like, "You don't have the germ, do you?" Because yeah, she talks about isolating and not wanting to pass it on, and people being vulnerable of it, and all the stuff that we heard for years on end. Let me check what this horror film is that Mia Goth's got coming out soon. I think it's with Alexander Skarsgård, if I remember rightly. Let me just double check real quick. Does she have a Wikipedia? She must have a Wikipedia page. Yeah, there we go. Infinity Pool. Infinity Pool's the new one that's coming out. Directed by Brandon Cronenberg. Oh shit, is he? Yeah, the son of David Cronenberg. Oh, I was just talking about The Fly a second ago. That's going to be interesting. I don't think I've seen any films from Brandon Cronenberg. Is this his? He must have done some films beforehand. Antiviral, Possessor, and Infinite. Wow, okay. I guess I'm going to have to go back and watch some of Brandon Cronenberg's movies and see what they're up to. But it looks really, really cool. It's got the film follows a struggling writer and his wife on a vacation who, after an accident, discover the country's dark culture. Oh, Craig's already seen it. He says Infinity Pool is awful. Oh, that's a shame. The trailer looks really interesting. And, studios can always put together a good trailer. But, yeah, it looked like some weird eyes wide shut, sort of like murderous cult. And, yeah, it kind of got my attention. But that's a real, it's got some kind of like weird seedy underbelly kind of thing going on as well, with some kind of like sex cult in there as well, by the looks of it, like asserting the males having to assert their dominance and everything. But it's a shame that it's awful. I might still check it out. I might do a review on it at the time just to give my own opinion on it. But that's a shame. That's a shame. What are the horror movies we got coming out this year? This is actually really nice to talk about a horror film on this channel, because I haven't really done it. One series of videos I was thinking of doing was doing a review series on horror films, picking a horror franchise. I don't know, like Halloween or Friday the 13th or whatever it happens to be, any horror franchise, and reviewing all of the films in the franchise. And I know after the first or the second ones, usually these franchises go to absolute shit, but I don't care. Like, I'm in it. If I'm reviewing them, I'm doing them beginning to end. But yeah, I'd love to do more horror reviews on the channel. If you guys would be interested in seeing that, let me know. In terms of horror films, we've got Scream 6 out this week. I'm actually really behind on the Scream films, though. I've seen Scream 1 to 3, and I've never seen 4 or 5. So I don't want to go and see 6, having not seen that. So maybe we could kickstart the reviews with a Scream retrospective, because it's been a while since I've seen the first 3. But yeah, let me know if you'd be down for that, if you'd be down for watching something like that, because there's a lot of horror films I still have yet to see and films I want to experience, but it would mean watching a lot of terrible direct-to-video films. And I'm not Red Letter Media. I don't know if I'm cut out for that, but Craig says that Friday the 13th, he watched them all back-to-back over 2 weeks. All are fun in their own way. Embarrassingly so, the first Friday the 13th movie I ever watched was Jason X when I was very, very young. And is my next-door neighbor's got an older brother, and his older brother collected all kinds of horror films. And we would just like grab one. If everyone was like out of the house, we'd grab one and we'd just like throw the film on. And we picked Jason X, which was fucking hilarious. Even back then, even as a kid, it wasn't scary. It was goddamn hilarious. And I remember distinctly on the DVD menu for Jason X, you could jump to a death scene. And the deaths, Jason X is so bad it's good film. It's fucking terrible what they did to that franchise. But the deaths in that film are so creative and so much fun. If I remember rightly, and this is, going back to childhood memories now, this is going to make me sound really disturbed. In Jason X, there's a scene where he grabs someone, puts their face in like a vat of liquid nitrogen and just bounces their face off a desk. I seem to remember Craig, you're going to have to confirm all these for me. This is like a sense memory now. There's someone laying on a fold-up bed, and Jason like folds the bed up and like snaps his back in half. I remember someone landing on like a giant like the tip of like a giant nail or screw, like a big drill. Sorry, like falling on top of a drill, and then their body just kind of all the way down it. And the best scene in the whole film is the scene with the what is it? The two women who are like sex crazed. It's like, do you want to have a beer, or do you want to smoke some pot, or have premarital sex? And they get their tits out, and the next scene that you see of them is them just stuffed in a sleeping bag, and he's just bouncing against a tree. Yeah, it's so much fun. But I've never seen the film beginning to end. I don't think. I think we only like kind of skipped to some of the death scenes in the film, or fast forwarded most of it. So I don't know. I'd love to go back to some of these franchises and just, you know, for better or worse, go through them all, beginning to end. I'm just going to have a quick look, see if there's any other horror films coming out this year that are worth any mention. I mean, I probably won't know from the title alone. Oh, there was I got a trailer for. Sorry, I feel like I'm going to sneeze. Am I good? Okay, I'm good. I got a trailer for. Is it called The Pope's Exorcist? I think it's called. I got a trailer for that Russell Crowe movie. What else can you do with exorcism movies at this point? It feels like you've seen one, you've seen them all, and it looks like exactly everything that you've ever seen. You've got people talking in like "your mother sucks cocks in hell" kind of voice. You've got people twisting their neck 360 degrees. You've got people contorting and twitching themselves into shapes, and Russell Crowe's in there doing an Italian accent. So yeah, that it doesn't look that great in all honesty. And then I also got a trailer for the new Evil Dead film, which, I mean, it ain't Bruce Campbell and it ain't Sam Raimi. So, I mean, I didn't really care for the remake in all honesty. The Evil Dead remake that came out however many years ago it was now. I really love the practical effects in there, and it is probably the most gruesomest of all three of them. Yeah, just like the practical effect gore and stuff in the remake is really, really good, but I just can't stand the characters, and it doesn't seem to have the same charm or personality as those three Sam Raimi films. But there we go. Maybe we could start there. Maybe we could start with the Evil Dead films and do a retrospective on those, because it's been a while since I've seen Evil Dead 1. Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness I've watched countless times, but it'd be good to sort of get clued in and all caught up with everything. I probably wouldn't be doing Ash versus Evil Dead. I have seen that series, and I'm really gutted that series got cancelled, because I think it was really good. Really nice continuation of the Evil Dead films, but that'll be too much to review. And I've seen them, so I'm all caught up. It would just be the films that I cover. Craig says, "Oh, this is going back to Jason X now. That sleeping bag is a callback to an older film where he does it once and people were pissed he didn't do it more." It was in the VR unit. And is it Ennie's Men? Watch Ennie's Men, great film. Let me check that actually. Ennie's Men. Let me just check this out real quick. Experimental folk horror film written and directed by Mark Jenkins, shot on 16mm film, set in 1973 on an inhabited island. Is this film out yet? Oh yeah, it came out. Release date. Yeah, it's already out. Yeah, it came out in January for us in the UK. No, I haven't heard about this one. Ennie's Men. I will have to check that out. I'll put that onto the list. But yeah, any horror films that you guys can recommend to me, and as I mentioned, let me know if you would want to see a retrospective of horror films on the channel. I think it'd be really nice. I haven't reviewed horror films on the channel all that much, but it's a genre of film that I'm really passionate about. You get some absolutely fantastic ones when done well, and you get some bottom of the barrel fucking direct-to-video shit when they're done poorly. So yeah, I'm just trying to see if there's any other horror. The Pope's Exorcist comes out next month. I think you've got Evil Dead comes out next month as well, I think. Yeah, Evil Dead Rise comes out the back end of April. So, shit, if I'm going to review the Evil Dead films, I better start next week. So I've got them all done on time. Anything else? I'm just scrolling through to see if I can see any other names that jump out to me. Then we're getting into the summer, so we're getting more of the blockbusters. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know, but I'll keep an eye out. Oh, there's a new Insidious movie coming out apparently in July. Insidious: Fear of the Dark, directed by Patrick Wilson. That's interesting. He's directing this one, directing and starring in, so that might be cool. I'm not counting Haunted Mansion by Disney. We're not counting that one. Let's see. I guess I'll see. What happens when one comes out. It'll be interesting to see. Craig says you need a horror film with Colin Farrell. Yeah, I'm sorry, dude. I was watching it last night, and I know you had to take off early. I hope work was all right. By the way, I just realised I haven't drank my tea for 40 minutes, so this is going to be cold. This is going to be nasty. One mug of steaming cold tea. Best drink it before it gets warm. That's a bottom reference. Hopefully someone caught that. Anyway, I'm kind of rounding off now. So yeah, go and see Pearl. I think it comes out this week. If you want to watch X before watching this one, I do think it will influence the film a little bit. You'll know where the character ends up, but this film stands on its own. This film absolutely stands on its own. And I'm now a fan of this franchise, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Ty West does next for the third one. And hell, if that third one's good, keep making them. as long as they're good, keep making them. But yeah. Craig says no vodka tonight. I'm out, dude. That was the last of the vodka last night. I polished it all off. There was only a little bit left, so yeah, it's the detox today. Detox. I've got a cup of tea, and I've been on nothing but water, so we're all good. Yeah, that'll do me. So I'm going to take off now. I'm going to do some piano practice, I think, now tonight. I've got to catch up with a lot of stuff. I never sleep. No time for sleep. Can't be doing it. But thank you to Craig for tuning in. Thank you to everyone else. I can see there's a few other people watching as well. I really appreciate the viewership. Let's just do the housekeeping before I round off completely. If you are discovering me through this review, and you like what you see, hopefully, well, I know I'm a horrible, dribbly mess right now, but please do consider subscribing to the channel for more movie reviews, discussions, and live streams. I've got a lot planned for the channel, and a lot kind of, the horror film franchises. I would love to do that, so maybe you'll see that in the future. When can you next expect to see me? I will be back Wednesday night at 10 p.m. GMT for my series of Mandalorian reviews. I'll be on with JX Editor again for that, and we'll be covering every episode for the remainder of Season 3. You can also follow me on Twitter. Give me a follow at Hobbit Fan Editor. I post times that I go live, anything that's on my mind. I'm more active on YouTube and on the community tab, so always make sure that you check the community tab for updates on there as well. Twitter, I just kind of go on occasionally, but occasionally I am on there. So yeah, give me a follow there. And if you haven't done so already, let me know your thoughts on Pearl. I'd be very interested to hear what people say about this. And clearly it's got a following, because when I booked my ticket for this, it was pretty much sold out. There were about 4 seats available to book. So yeah, I didn't realize this franchise was as big as it was, or maybe people had saw the trailer and were interested to see it as well. So yeah, thank you very much for tuning in. Really appreciate that, Craig. Thank you very much. I'm glad you liked the reviews. And yeah, I will catch you guys next time. Have a good night, everyone.